go ahead and get started. I believe we're picking up today with Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night on 786 in the 11th edition. This is the form is called a villanelle. You've got it mentioned at the top of 786. It's a very complex poetic form because of how it's structured, not only with the tercets. Tercets are three-line stanzas, but because of the repetition of specific lines. Top of the page reads, the first and third lines of the initial tercet rhyme, so lines 1 and 3. These lines are then repeated in each subsequent tercet and in the final 2 lines of the quatrain, the final 4 lines of the poem. Moreover, line 1 reappears entirely as lines 6, 12, and 18, and line 3 reappears as 9, 15, and 19. So in order to write this kind of poem, it takes a lot of work to get it so that all the ideas match and fit within the context, okay? So this is by Dylan Thomas, Welsh poet, died of alcoholism at a very young age, 39 I believe he was. Died way too early. He would have probably produced a lot of very good poetry. Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night is the title. 1952, published shortly before he died. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Compare the attitude in this poem with the opening lines of John Donne's A Valediction Forbidding Mourning. As virtuous men pass mildly away, and some say their souls do go now, and some say nay, okay? Virtuous men die silently. They're not raging, they're not angry, they're accepting of death, etc., etc. This speaker, whoever the speaker is telling the reader, whatever happens, fight. Fight against death, okay? So let's go back through it, stanza by stanza. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. What's meant by burn and rave? This is page 786 in the 11th. Rave is pretty clear. It's rage. That's yell. That's anger. Burn is probably maybe not quite a synonym, but pretty close. Burn implies anger, passion, all right? And notice it's old age should rave at close of day. Speaker's not talking about somebody in their 20s, 30s, or 40s dying. This is an old person, supposedly in this first stanza. So rage, rage against the dying of the light. Notice, however, in that first line, what's the dying of the light referred to in the first line? That good night. Night is symbolic for death across Western culture. Night, darkness, symbolizes death, okay? But it's a good night, interestingly. If it's a good night, why rage? Why fight against it? Second stanza. In beginning with stanza 2, and in stanza 2, 3, 4, 2 through 5, we get an adjective to describe men. And it's a different adjective each time. It's implying a different kind of character, a different aspect of these men. So the first one is wise men. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. So what does that mean? They know that dark is right. Is this a black is beautiful kind of statement? Not necessarily. If dark and night represent death, then what's the speaker saying? Wise men, notice, know at their end dark is right, meaning probably everyone must die. Wise men accept that. Wise men know that. All right? Comma. There's an indication that after the comma, there's a shift of attitude. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. We've already been told that they know dark is right. The implication is everyone has to die. But the because implies a but. What? Their words had forked no lightning. What does it mean, forked no lightning? You've heard of the adage, you would often see this in old westerns from the 30s and early 40s. An Indian is speaking to a white settler somewhere in the Midwest or the plains or something, and the white settler had said an untruth. And the Indian would say, the white man speaks with forked tongue, meaning two different meanings. And it's like two opposite meanings, okay? Here, it's talking about lightning that forks. Well, have you ever seen just a single bolt of lightning? Not usually. Usually there's little side strands. Their words had forked, spread out, no lightning. What's meant by lightning? What does lightning do in a dark night? You get this bright flash, right? It illuminates. Their words don't illuminate what? Use the door here a lot, especially in Hamlet and such, as an image for death. These are wise men. Their wise words fork how much lightning about death? Zip. In other words, it doesn't explain what's behind the door. Because their words, their wisdom, had forked no lightning, had given no illumination, had given no light, no understanding, they do what? On their deathbeds, they rage. Okay? Or they do not go gentle into that good night. That is, they know it's right that you have to die, but they still rage against it. Good men, there's a difference between wise men and good men. All right? Good men seek the good. Good men seek to do good. Wise men don't necessarily. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. The last wave by, now that might mean this kind of wave, like they're on their deathbed, waving. Probably it doesn't though. Probably it means wave like in a wave of Marines making an amphibious assault. My uncle was on the second wave, I think, of the Marines who invaded Okinawa in World War II. Okay, or think of all the Marines and such who landed at Normandy and the other beaches of northern France in D-Day. Wave after wave of them landed. So this is good men, the last wave, the last group or cohort of good men. They do what? Crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. The deeds dancing in a green bay, that could be an allusion to Greek mythology and Greek history about, victors being crowned and such, okay? It could be an allusion because of when this is written, 1952. It could be an allusion to World War II. The Green Bay, meaning, this approach via water and these historic deeds that they did. They're frail deeds, however. What is the fact that they're frail? What does that frail imply? Insignificant, unimportant, not lasting, weak. That is, they did these deeds that now are no longer remembered. They do what? They rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it's on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. How do you catch and sing the sun in flight? We've already read a poem that alludes to that. Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress. The speaker says towards the end, addressing his lover, his mistress, though we cannot make the sun stand still, yet we will make him run. Talking about their erotic involvement. They will kind of make time stop while they're involved in sex. It'll be as if time is, okay. Can't literally make it stop, obviously. So he's saying, we'll make him run. We will so use up our time. Okay, so now go back to this. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, that is, tried to stop it, hold on to it. They learn what? Too late. All they did was grieve the sun on its way. Grieve it, caused it pain. How do you grieve the sun? That's what's called a pathetic fallacy. That's ascribing human emotions to an inanimate object. You can't grieve the sun, literally. So what is he suggesting? It was a futile attempt. So they do what? Rage. They do not go in gentle into that good night. I was reading the next stanza. Grave men. So we start from wise men, then we go to good men, then we go to wild men, and then we end with grave men. And there's a pun involved in that word grave. Grave men near death, right, a grave, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. So what else does grave mean? Trying to think when this was. If it was before the convention or after. When Senator Obama was running for president, a lot of the discussion about him was he doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have the gravitas. He doesn't have the grave mentality. He wasn't solemn or serious enough because he had just little experience. The reason he chose Joe Biden was because it was assumed by Democrats Biden brought gravitas, graveness to the campaign because he had been in the Senate for 40 plus years at that point, okay? He'd been involved in all kinds of foreign policy, stuff like that. Same thing with Trump, by the way. I'm not picking on Obama. Trump picked Mike Pence because Pence had years of experience in Washington and as an executive, twice governor of Indiana. Okay? Neither Trump nor Obama were thought as, quote unquote, serious enough to have the presidency without some kind of, serious idea man, so to speak, beside him. So, grave men means serious minded. But it also does mean men near the grave who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. That's a weird line. Who see with blinding sight. How can sight be blinding? What can you look at that'll make you blind? The sun. Okay? But when you look briefly at the sun, what do you see before you go blind? Blinding sight. That is, you see the whiteness before you go blind. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. I don't know if you've ever known someone who's blind. I've known several people. A couple, I've had the temerity to ask if I could see their eyes. Because blind folks usually wear dark glasses. Okay? Sometimes they're blind and you can't tell by looking at their eyes. But many of the ones I've known, if they take their glasses off and open their eyelids, it's like the eye is just clouded over. You don't see a pupil or cornea or anything like that. That blind eyes could blaze like meteors. How do meteors blaze? Psst. Quickly. Okay? Their eyes could blaze like meteors, meaning they see something for a moment. There's this perception that, and be gay. Gay here means happy, full of joy. It's like they see something for an instant and they rage against the dying of the light. Why do they rage against the dying of the light? Well, for one reason, the light for them has been what? Instantaneous. Okay? Be pretty natural to rage against that. Get on YouTube. There's all kinds of videos of people who have various, seeing difficulties, hearing difficulties, and, a baby gets glasses. And the baby can only see colors and shapes before that. Baby, toddler, gets glasses. There's this one I'm thinking of, I saw it, a week or two ago. It's like a 1-year-old, 2-year-old kid. And the mother fusses to get these glasses on. I'm not kidding. This kid's glasses have got to be an inch thick glass. Okay? She gets them on him, gets his hands, and finally he looks at her, and the kid just gets a grin that splits his face. Because it's the first time he has seen her actual face. Same thing, people who get cochlear implants. They can never hear before. And they hear wives, husbands, child's voices, etc., and they just burst into tears. That's the idea, I think, that's being given there. Then we get the quatrain, the final stanza. And you, not some amorphous or some anonymous wise men, good men, grave men, wild men, in you, my Father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. What's the sad height? It's metaphor, by the way. It's not literal. Standing on the precipice of death. Why does the speaker say, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears? Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. The speaker's father is dying. Speaker's father's on the deathbed. What does the speaker want from the father? kind of comment. When my mom died, what year is this, 24? 9 years ago, it'll be 10 years in January. When I got out there before she died, 3, maybe 4 days before she died, she wasn't speaking at all. She was just in bed. She had Alzheimer's. I mean, for all intents and purposes, she was gone. The body was still there, okay? I think about a week, maybe 2 weeks before, she could still barely talk, okay? I think the speaker is in that kind of position that I was with my mom. She's lying there in bed. The difference was I was okay with that because I knew this is to be expected. The speaker is saying what, though? Say something to me. Give me a final anything. I don't care what it is. You can curse me up one side and down the other, or you can bless me up one side and down the other. Just don't go quietly. Show me, by the cursing or blessing, that in one sense you will fight this. Why? Because the speaker is the one not ready to accept death. Why do people ask for prayers for somebody who's about to die? Because they don't want that person to die. Okay? Go from there. And by the way, this is the first of several poems that I used to arrange several years ago when I would arrange the poetry. I'd arrange them in kind of general topics, and the second to the last day or so, they'd all be about death and dying and grieving and such. Okay, so next one, lost my place again. Death Be Not Proud, page 819. This is a sonnet by John Donne. It's an English sonnet in terms of its format or its structure. The final 2 lines are the conclusion. The eternal I and die are meant to rhyme. They would have rhymed in Donne's day. Okay. Donne, I mentioned before when we talked about the valediction forbidding mourning, was a priest, became a priest in 1615, became such a good priest, King James made him his private chaplain, so Donne would write sermons to just deliver to the king. And when Donne was preaching in St. Paul's Cathedral, he became what's called the Dean of St. Paul's, that is, he ran the cathedral. The cathedral that Donne preached at is not the St. Paul's in London today. The one Donne preached at was entirely made out of wood, and it burned to the ground in 1666 when most of London burned to the ground. All right? But the reason I'm pointing that out is Donne's sermons were so good, his ability as an orator was so good, he would pack the cathedral to standing room only. And some of his sermons, literally, I'm not jesting, lasted for 4 and 5 hours. Going to one of his sermons was like somebody today going to Manchester for Bonnaroo. They would just sit there enwrapped, right? For a couple of reasons. The verbal wordplay, the way he constructed literary verbal arguments was like an architect building this grand cathedral. So this poem, Death Be Not Proud, this is one of what are called Donne's holy sonnets. He wrote a total of, I should remember, my dissertation was an edition of them. Total of 19 of them, right? He first wrote a cycle of 12, and then he wrote 4 more. He pulled 4 out of that original cycle, put these 4 in. Then he did another cycle of essentially 16, or a copyist did, of all 16 of them. And then he wrote 3 more, probably after the death of his wife. One of them is clearly about his wife, okay? This is one of the original 12. The date there is totally ludicrous. We have no idea. We can't even place within 5 years when done, except for the one about his wife, or the 3 last ones. We can't place when they were written. They were probably written in the 1608 to 1614 time period. So, this is one of the 2 most commonly anthologized sonnets by Donne. The other one we're going to read in a few minutes. Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure. Then from thee much more must flow. And soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and soul's delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell. And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke. Why swell'st thou then? So let's stop there. We'll come to the final couplet in a moment. Some of the manuscripts, again, my dissertation was a scholarly edition of these poems. I looked at all the manuscripts. I looked at all the manuscripts in the originals, went to Harvard, London, etc., looked at all of them, compiled all of them to try to figure out what Donne wrote at the beginning and what he wrote at the end and how they all came to be this way. Some of the manuscripts don't read death be not proud, comma. They read death be not proud, period. And there's 1 or 2, if I remember right, that have an exclamation. Death be not proud. Like, shut the hell up. All right? Though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. He's saying what to death? You don't scare me. You're not great. And be not proud means what? If someone is proud, what do they think about themselves? No one would ever say Muhammad Ali was bashful or humble. The greatest of all time. I mean, the idea of the GOAT, it comes from Ali. He was the one who said, I am the greatest forever. Okay? And boxing-wise, probably pretty close, if not the truth. Thou art not, what? Mighty and dreadful. Why? For those whom thou thinkst thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. Well, what do you mean they don't die? If they die, they're dead, right? He's saying death hasn't overthrown them. And he's going to give us a reason in the second quatrain. From rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure. That is, from rest and sleep, we derive pleasure, rest. Stay up for a long time. Stay awake. When I went to school at Covenant College on Lookout Mountain, small liberal arts Christian school, I would drive back and forth at the end or beginning of semesters from San Jose, California, Silicon Valley. I would do that drive nonstop. It's about 2,600 miles. If I was going really fast, I could do it in about 36 hours. If I was obeying the speed limit, it's more like 39, 40 hours. Non-stop, no sleep. That's a lot of Coke, but drinking Coke and no dose, okay? Never did the other. So that by the time I would arrive, I'd be so jacked up on caffeine, But then I would sleep. And when I'd wake up from that sleep, it'd be like, that's what he's saying. So look at those lines again. From rest and sleep, which are but pictures of death. They're images of death. He says, we get much pleasure. Then from thee, much more must flow. If we get rest and pleasure from an image of something, how much more will we get from the real thing? And soon as our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery. Think of Hamlet's to be or not to be speech. Why is he, before he gets to the thing about bad dreams, what is he suggesting death will do? It will bring an end to all the problems of this life, right? No more slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. That is chance events. No more, proud man's contumely, snotty people looking down their noses at you. No more injustice. No more hunger. No more poverty. No more. Think of all the crap in the world. What do people get from death? Rest of their bones and soul's delivery. In that line, soul's delivery, or that phrase, implies that the soul is somehow trapped in here. That is not what's called a heterodox Christian position. That is, let me rephrase that. It's not an orthodox Christian position. That is, it's not traditional. The idea that the soul is trapped in the body is a heresy, according to the Christian tradition. And Donne is writing within the Christian tradition. He's not a priest yet, but he is a Christian. All right? He will, in another poem, make clear everything I'm writing in here is strictly traditional Christian tradition. All right? So, stanza 3, or quatrain 3. He tells us how death does its work. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell. Death thinks it's a master. Death thinks it's a king. But instead he says, no, you're a slave. So if it's a slave, then it is what? It is forced to do what it does by fate, chance, kings, and desperate men. Give me an example of desperate men. You walk out of a gas station, 11 o'clock at night, some guy rolls up in a beat up car and robs you at gunpoint. Why? Jollies? Probably not. Those are usually instances of someone who is in desperate means. They don't have money, a variety of things. Okay? And you dwell with what? Poison, war, and sickness. Who wants to have poison, war, and sickness as their best friends or as their roommates? Not good companions. And then you get these two lines, which students of the late 20th and 21st century identify probably better with than did readers in Donne's day. The poems were never published in Donne's day, by the way. The only people who read these poems were Donne's friends that he allowed to read his manuscripts or to make copies of them. Okay? And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke. What does he mean, poppy or charms? What do we get from poppies? Opium, heroin. Okay? He's talking about opium. Poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. How? Just a little bit more than you need, and you're on that long sleep of death. As well and better than thy stroke. How do you want to die? Do you want to die a slow, debilitating, bone cancer death where every moment is agony? Or do you just want to drift off in your sleep? I'll take door number 2 every time, okay? Do you want to die by having your pilot and co-pilot and navigator have heart attacks while you're 30,000 feet in the air? No, most people don't. Why swellst thou then? Swellst, your gloss tells you, swell with pride. Why? Death be not proud. First clause, even though this isn't the end of the poem, This is rhetorically the end of the first 12 lines, because he's paralleled, death be not proud, why swellest thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Okay? Not quite half of the manuscripts of this poem, for that second to the last line, one short sleep past, we wake eternally, say, one short sleep past, we live eternally. Sleep, wake, makes natural sense. Sleep, live, that's harder. If you apply that thing I'd written up here, lectio difficilior, the principle of textual criticism, that the more difficult reading is the more likely, or the stronger reading. I think, and I argued in my dissertation, Donne's original wording was the we live eternally. Why? Resurrection. That's what the idea is implying. We wake eternally implies an eternal opening of the eyes. And in one sense, a very, very narrow sense, that is the more difficult reading. Why? Because the New Testament talks about, I'm going to make an assumption, everybody here is quote unquote Christian, you're going to wake up with Jesus, in the resurrection, that we will forever be having our eyes opened. We'll forever be understanding more and more and more and more and more about God. It will be an eternal awakening, okay? And death shall be no more. That is, when those eyes wake up, death will be gone forever. Death, thou shalt die. And that is the true rhetorical ending. Why? Because what happens to pride? Pride goeth before fall. Old Testament Proverbs. That's it. Death will be no more. Okay? Go from there to She Walks in Beauty, 1048. By George Gordon, Lord Byron. Oh, let me throw this out there. I should probably make a comment so it'll be on video too. On a quiz, there is a quiz over these poems. There's going to be the question, it's going to be something like, name the author, and I'll have a bunch of poems listed. She Walks in Beauty. The author is George Gordon or Lord Byron, or George Gordon, Lord Byron. It's not George Byron, nor is it Gordon Byron, and it's not Lord Gordon. All right? I've had all of those as answers before. As the quiz and the third quiz and the exam will point out, when an author has three names, first, middle, and last, give the full author's name. All right? This isn't one of those. George Gordon is the name, Lord Byron is his title. Either of those is sufficient. But for example, Gerard Manley Hopkins, who we've read one poem by, we're going to talk about one today. All three names you have to give. Percy Bysshe Shelley, you have to give all three names, okay? And I'll just throw this out. A lot of people in this class, in my next class, in my Tuesday version of this class, must think I'm really stupid and that I don't understand how students can cheat on quizzes, okay? It's pretty easy to figure out when somebody's cheating, because usually it's not just one person, and it's not one person and everybody else copying from that person. Here's an example. One of the quizzes, I think the first quiz, the very first question was, name the title of the poem by John Updike that talks about the death of a family pet. Okay? Correct answer is Dog's Death. A lot of people had the same wrong answer. I don't remember what it was, but I was like, well, that's weird. So I got on Google. I typed in the question, and Google gave Dog's Death. So I thought, So I started shortening the question till I finally put in John Updike, poem, death. And it gave me the 2-word answer that, I'm not kidding, across 3 classes, at least a dozen people had. Okay? Those who did that and put that answer down got a 0 on the quiz. That was a 15-point quiz. That's gonna hurt, all right? So don't cheat. I'm not stupid. I can usually figure it out pretty quickly. And I've got to go back. I should point this out. I already graded the drama exams for this class. I haven't for the other class. And it struck me when I finished, I didn't even notice it when I was going through them. There were probably 4 or 5 people that had, for one of the early questions, the same wrong answer. It was close to the right answer, but it was a wrong answer that came straight from Google. Okay? So I've got to go back and change the grading on several of the exams. All that's the background. Okay, so George Gordon, Lord Byron. She walks in beauty. And I meant to do this last night and I forgot. This poem is about a specific woman. I was reading about this, I don't know, a couple of years ago. It came up in something, and I was like, oh, I never knew that before. And I'm drawing a blank as to who it was, and I forgot to look it up last night. Part of me wants to say it's Mary Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley's wife, who wrote Frankenstein, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. But the other part, like the other half of me, I'm divided here, says, no, it's not her, it's somebody else. Anyways. Byron, and I won't say much, Byron was a weird dude. He was into some weirds. I just saw a link yesterday on this kind of literary part of a blog I look at that said he was a seriously maladjusted, into some real kinky stuff. So, this is not, however, this is just gorgeous. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies. And all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. Thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace, which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face. Where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. And on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, so eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell of days in goodness spent. A mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. Okay? So the woman he's describing is just perfect. He first describes physical appearance, but then he goes inward to her. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes in starry skies. So what is a night with a cloudless, starry sky like? It's harder for us to understand in Murfreesboro because we've got enough pollution where you go outside at 2 a.m. in the morning and look up, you can see stars, but it's not like somewhere where there aren't normally any clouds and you have crystal clear sky. I usually use the example of like when my dad and brother and I would go backpacking in Yosemite, high Sierras, 10,000 feet. I can remember our first time, we literally camped a little over 10,000 feet, right on the top of a peak, and just looking up and seeing the Milky Way like spread out like a banner above us. Just amazing, okay? That's what he's talking about. She walks in beauty like that, but notice it's like the night, it's not daytime. He's getting at something about her physical features. And all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. Her aspect means her face. So all that's best of dark nighttime and bright daytime meet in her, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. Her face isn't like the bright sun, as Petrarch in his Petrarchan sonnets would imply. She's not the sun that lights up the room. No, she has this almost dimmed quality to her beauty. One shade the more, shade, shadow, darkness, one ray, beam of light, the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress. What color's her hair? Raven colored, black. Okay? So, but one shade of blackness darker and one ray of light lighter would half impair the beauty of her hair, or softly lightens o'er her face. So the darkness and the light, he's not talking about literal blackness or, let's say, whiteness, like the whiteness of light. He's talking about the effect of light and shadow. I don't think I've ever pointed this out before. There's a principle in painting called chiaroscuro, and it's the effect of light and dark. Okay? The great master of this effect in painting is Rembrandt. Rembrandt, all of his portraits, what you will notice is you'll never see a face lit straight on. It's always from the side, from slightly above. Whenever you see a film or a TV show or something, and you see somebody, and right here, on the side of the face, beside the bridge of their nose and beneath their eye, you see a triangle of light. It's called Rembrandt lighting. Because Rembrandt uses that kind of lighting in most of his portraits. So, the light and the dark, he says, softly lightens o'er her face, semicolon, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place. Where are our thoughts composed? Where are they formed? In our brains. We don't see our brains, though. We don't see other people's thoughts. We see their faces. Their faces can betray or express those thoughts. And he says, the thoughts are serenely expressed, how pure, how dear the dwelling place. That is the face. And the face, he's saying, is telling us what kind of thought she has. Pure, dear. And on that cheek, and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, so eloquent, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow. Smiles that win what? He's talking about her smiles that win other people's favor. The tints that glow. What makes a person's, woman's usually, face quote unquote glow? It's when the capillaries in the face start to swell with blood and she blushes. These things but tell of days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. Now, a mind at peace with all below might mean she doesn't look down on people beneath her social status-wise. Might mean that. I don't think it does. I think it means her mind is at peace with all below. That is, her mind is at peace with her body, with her passions. Everything is working together, hand in glove. There's not a war between the passions and the mind. A heart whose love is innocent. That is, there's no guile, there's no trickery, there's no deceit, there's no falsity. Compare how different this seems with some of the ideas we've heard expressed in earlier literature about how false women can be. Think of Hamlet, where he talks about women making cuckolds of their husbands by cheating on them and such. Okay? Last one, because I don't think we'll be able to do any more today. Bad in My Heart by Donne on 1050. See, we've got 2 more days after this. Yeah, we'll probably be able to finish all those. This is the other of Donne's holy sonnets that is always anthologized. Okay? Also one of his original 12. Better my heart, the date there is totally irrelevant. Better my heart, three-person God, for you is it, but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, overthrow me and bend, your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. Is that how that should be read? No. It should be, better my heart. It's emphatic. He's saying, God, destroy me. Three-person God, Trinitarian, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Why? He wants to make sure he's theologically correct. For you as yet, but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend. Those are all images from Scripture. Every one of those verbs is used in the Old or New Testament. You as yet, but knock. New Testament. Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. He who lets me in, I will dwell with. Okay? Breathe. Old Testament, New Testament, Jesus breathes on the disciples the gift of the Holy Spirit prior to Pentecost. Shine, may the Lord make his face to shine upon you, the greatest of the Old Testament blessings, and seek to mend. All these things, knocking, breathing, shining, are towards an end, a purpose, which is what? The restoration of the individual. Okay? That I may rise and stand, that I can get up and stand, overthrow me. That means deck me. Knock me down to the ground. And bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. Break, blow, burn, and make me new are images from harvesting grain. Okay? Wheat. Go into a wheat field, pull a head of wheat off, and you've got all these little seed things on. You get that, you grind it between your hands. That's breaking. So now you have kernels of wheat and the hull around the outside. You blow the hull away. That's blow. You burn that. Why? Because it's waste. You don't need it. You then do what with the seed? In order to make more or new wheat, you plant it and make me new. Christ says, unless a seed dies in the earth, it cannot be born again. Okay? I, like a usurped town to another do, labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. I belong to someone else. I'm trying to let you, the someone else, in, but I've been usurped, and I can't get you in. Reason you're viceroy in me. Viceroy means ruler in your stead. Okay? Should defend me, but is captive and proves weak or untrue. That is, reason in me is held captive by the enemy that has usurped me, or it's unfaithful, not to me, but to you. Part of sin, original sin. Think of the Calvinistic total depravity. Even our reason is tainted. Yet dearly I love you and would be loved fain. Fain means in return. But am betrothed unto your enemy. And it's 8:55. So we'll stop. We'll pick this one up and finish it on Monday. For Monday, go ahead and do the stuff on the syllabus through the 19th. We'll probably get all that done. And then we have 2 days next week. All right. One quiz is due, the second quiz is due Sunday night, I believe.